Yes, it's Hollie's Hotspurs back with another one. Chatting all things Tottenham, we're second to none. Special guests every time, if it's win, lose or draw. The passion is high like Harry Kane when he scores. Or when Lloris makes a world-class save. We got Hollie running the mid every game. Settle down, stick around, share your thoughts with the panel. And make sure you're subscribing to the channel. Coys.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Hollie's Hotspurs Live, where tonight Crackers is throwing all his shapes to the theme tune. Sadly, we obviously didn't beat Bournemouth, but Crackers is here to give us a bit of joy this evening. But yes, tonight we're going to dissect obviously that loss against Bournemouth, and there's an awful lot more to dissect off the pitch. With me not tonight to dissect everything that went on, I'm joined by, at the moment, two fabulous guests. So first of all, Lee, thank you so much for coming onto the show. How are you, my friend?
Really good, Hollie. Thank you so much for having me on. I feel like I'm moonlighting a little bit, to be fair. I'm representing the last word on Spurs, obviously with one of my good pals and co-hosts of Last Word on Spurs as well, with the Crackmeister, with the Crackers. Really happy to be on here, Hollie. And yeah, I'm looking. Well, I don't know if I'm looking forward to getting into it, but I know it's going to be therapy by the end of it. So, yeah, really happy to be here, mate. So thanks for having me on.
No, thank you very much for coming on. And like you say, it's going to be another good therapy session because that's all these programs seem to be at the moment. Every stream I do on a Monday is a good therapy session. And also joining me tonight is Crackers. Crackers, how are you, my friend?
Hi, Hollie, Lee, and fellow Tottenham sufferers. Hope you're all keeping safe and well, and it really is, isn't it? Fellow Tottenham sufferers at the moment. On the day 63 years ago? No, 62. So you can tell I went to school in Hackney, can't you? I can't count to 62. But we won the league, and only 2 years ago of that night at the Etihad. And they say a week's a long time in politics. Wow, it's a long time on planet Tottenham as well. So yeah, not looking forward to getting into everything being discussed this evening. So
Crackers, Hollie, it could be 19 years for that lot up the road that they ain't won the league. Is that too early?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, I'll take it after the weekend. And also, it's almost like he knew that it was about time to go live because we have also got Darren with us tonight. Darren, how are you, my friend?
I'm really well. Thanks for inviting me on. It's a real pleasure to be with you. Good to see Lee as well. I said, "What, Lee? Do I remember you having a beard?"
Yes, do you know what? I just looked at Hollie's picture she put up of me before the show, and I look a massive beard. I've just realised I've taken it off. So yes, I did have a beard, Darren. You're absolutely right. But
Mr. Crackman, good evening to you too.
Evening, Darren. I love that entry into the show, by the way. Just slipped in the very moment you was going to be introduced. So what timing? Perfect.
Perfected it very well.
I'm just sad that I'm here while you guys are picking through the wreckage of another tricky weekend.
Oh yeah, and just like that, we're going to delve straight into it. To start with, obviously, thank you to everybody that's tuning in right now. Thank you all much for the love. Remember, keep your comments in. I'll try and zoom them up when we're discussing stuff. But to start with, obviously, Crackers, I'll come to you for this first one because it was the same kind of lineup that we faced Brighton. Now, from a first off, were you kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Were you surprised it was the same lineup, or being Stellini at the moment, you kind of like, yes, it's the same old, same old?
No, not really surprised at all because we just seem to be a club that continues to do the same thing over and over again at board level, on the pitch and everywhere. To try and be fair to the club a little, we are a bit hamstrung, if you pardon the pun, by injuries as well. So our options are limited. But I've noticed in the last 20 minutes of the game on Saturday and the week before, we have changed shape to go chasing games. And we've been a little bit more front foot, and it's been a little bit more upbeat. I think we got to about 60, 65 minutes on Saturday and we got on the front foot. Bournemouth looked a little bit startled by it and a little bit all over the place. And you think to yourself, well, if you can do it for 20 minutes, can we not just add another 75 minutes to that and just see if it works? So, again, a big Dan Juma shaped hole in that starting lineup, a lad that's, done absolutely nothing wrong and well worth a try, because, that current lineup that we all love and hate in equal measures just isn't working. Also, another SAR-shaped hole in that lineup as well. 8 minutes since his game in the Champions League where he was decent. So, there's a couple of options within those limited options, but I don't know. I think you're looking at a man in the dugout at the moment completely out of his depth, which we saw with the substitution that he made, the in-game on and off, which I'm sure we'll get into. And we just looked like the clown's car on fire that we currently are, didn't we? So no great surprises with the lineup.
No, and I think that's the thing. Each week, I'm just sat here thinking, oh, here we go. It's another time in the clown show. But Lee, I'll come to you because obviously it wasn't all doom and gloom, as we did manage to get the goal straight away, pretty much from Heung-min Son. Now, I don't know about you, but in recent games at the start of the season and going on, I felt like he hasn't been himself. But I felt from that game against Bournemouth, he really seemed to be delving into his game again.
No, for sure. I think that, he's had a real tough season. There's no doubt about it. Like we all have, not just the players, the fans, definitely. But Sonny's had a really tough season. I think there's a couple of things to balance Sonny out with. Last season was absolutely outstanding for him. What by far his best season in the Tottenham shirt, in any football shirt, really, and to win or share the Golden Boot. And actually, previous to that, if you look at some of the statistics, I ain't got them in front of me, but I've got the little blue book kind of here. I think the season before he got the Golden Boot, I think he got 17 Premier League goals, and before that he was in double figures, but in the low double figures, like 10s and 11s. So for him to score 23 Premier League goals last season was a massive return for him. And obviously, expectations go up. So now, what's he on now? I think he's on 8 or 9, and having an absolute shocking season. Yet he's actually, couple more goals before the end of the season, gets in double figures again, and that's where his level is at. So that's, I suppose, a little bit of a balance. But look, let's be honest, you can't paint over the cracks. He's had a shocking season by his standards, and I think he's admitted that and he knows that. But what's quite interesting is when Perisic first came into the football club, I, for one, as well, was saying this as well, was echoing everybody else, is that Son and Perisic can't play with each other. I think they went out like 8 or 9 games where neither of them scored or assisted whilst being on the pitch at the same time with each other. And I thought, wow, that's quite interesting. A few people picked that up. But now, again, to balance that out, Perisic now has assisted Son's last 2 goals, I think it is. And he obviously assisted him against Preston North End when Sonny scored in that game as well. So Perisic has now got direct involvements with Sonny. So maybe something has changed or clicked. But, to go into the point that Crackers talked about before, and, when we all first started the show, and it's kind of like we're just dropping back and we kind of knew what we was going to expect. I don't think it's not necessarily a style of play, sorry. I don't think the tactics that we've now got embedded into the team, regardless if it's Stellini or Antonio Conte, works or fits with how Son's game is. And I think last season you could say, well, hang on a minute, Antonio Conte was in charge, but he was still putting his imprint on that team. And really it was about, the summer that we had in South Korea. I still go back to them training sessions when they were getting absolutely beasted and they're being sick on the side of the pitch and all that sort of stuff. Is that sort of thing caught up with the team now with the amount of injuries that we've got? It's hard to believe, isn't it, Holly, that was actually the beginning of this season. It feels like about 3 years ago, doesn't it? It's madness.
Mad. It is crazy. And I think you've made some valid points as well with Crackers. I think it's this formation, Darren. And the fact that many have said that under Conte and even now under Stellini, let's be honest, it's pretty much the same thing, that Son has been shackled. And like Lee said, I don't know if you want to add on to it, Darren, it's the fact that for Son, it feels like he's not actually playing the Son way, if that makes sense. But we're seeing glimpses of it. I don't know whether that is because he's had enough of having to put up with this Stellini formation. He's just going to go and do his own thing.
The whole debate is quite fascinating, really, about Son, because I've never really felt that your attack is the problem. And the numbers bear that out. Tottenham are the highest scorers in the top 6. They've got 57 goals so far this season. So it's never really been the problem it's never really been the issue that you've struggled to score goals. It's really that those goals don't mean something because Tottenham are so bad at the back. And what surprised me last summer was that rather than looking at other areas of the pitch, I mean, okay, you could argue the one other area you did need to look at was getting in somebody who could allow Harry to rest at some stages of the season rather than get his customary mid-season injury. But all of the work needed to be on the defence. Eric Dyer isn't a centre-half. There may well be people who come on and disagree with that, but you only have to look at the lack of consistency, the number of goals conceded, the way that those goals are conceded to know that what Tottenham need is leadership at the back. And you've had that in the past. I remember when Toby Alderweireld came to the club and straight away, Danny Rose and Jan Vertonghen and Carl Walker, they weren't rudderless anymore. There was leadership, there was organisation, there was a calm head, and there was an authority about that defence that they haven't had since Alderweireld left. And I just feel that if you did have that solidity at the back, then those goals that you are scoring for fun would mean something. I look at the fact that Newcastle, with all the new money that they got, the first thing they did was build at the back, and that's why they got the best defence in the Premier League. Man United, when Ten Hag arrived, he brought in Lisandro Martinez, and he obviously already had Rafael Varane, but he brought in Terrell Malacia as well. He looked at rebuilding the back line because nobody wins anything or achieves their ambitions without a solid back line. And Spurs haven't had that for quite some time. So I do get the concerns, and you're absolutely right to say that for all the goals that you've scored so far this season, Son isn't really the Son of the past. But there's an argument for saying, you know, he's a human being, and eventually you get when all of the burden of bailing the club out is on your shoulders, then eventually it starts to tell. The law of averages says that you will have a dip at some stage, and actually, it's to Harry's credit, his immense credit, that he is so consistent, 20 plus goals season in, season out. And I do worry for what will happen when Harry leaves. And I think it is a matter of time that he leaves. And if he does leave, listen, you guys have all been here before with Carrick, with Berbatov, with Modric, with Bale. You know how this plays out. You've seen this movie before. The club throw King's ransom their way. But when you've become the all-time record scorer for the club, and the club hasn't done its part by building and creating the team around you for your goals to mean something, what are you supposed to do?
I think you've hit it on the nail on the head in the sense that, like you say, yes, okay, Sonny hasn't had his best season so far this season, or this season at all. But when you've got a defence that can't even, like I said, manage to do what we do week in, week out and lose it, it's evident to show that those guys at top don't want to do their bit. Yes, Lee, go on.
Can I just say on the Sonny thing as well, because I'm sure there's loads to get back in onto that Kane piece as well. That Dan just threw that bomb in there clearly. But on the Sonny thing, if you look tactically the way we're set up, and you can see this against Bournemouth, right? What's happening is Sonny's dropping into a position where we're basically a 5-4-1 when we ain't got the ball, right? So when the opposition's got the ball, we're a 5-4-1. We're setting up like some of the lower level teams, should we say, of the past. And what's happening is Sonny's dropping deep, and then he's getting the ball in the area, ironically, where he scored the Puskas goal, right? But he's getting the area in that the ball in that area, and then he's having to run 40, 50, 60 yards up the pitch on a counter attack, right? That's pretty much where we're going with that. Or what's happening is Kane gets that ball deep, Sonny's off on his heels, if you like, ready to run that 40, 50, 60 yard sprint again, ready to receive the ball. And what we're not doing, and against when he scored against Brighton, for example, is getting Sonny in them areas where he can absolutely hurt teams with goals, with shots, with finishes like that. And I think that's the point, is that I agree with you, Darren, that actually you look at it on the outside and go, oh yeah, you know, Sonny's had a bad season. But if he scores, and it's quite viable that he will, or he could, he might score another 4 or 5 Premier League goals this season before the end of the season. He scored 14, 15 Premier League goals with 5 or 6 assists. That's kind of his level, isn't it? That's what you'd kind of expect from him, you know, and therefore even a bad season is actually not that bad. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I actually agree with you. But my point is, it is a little bit like pumping air into a football. He could score those goals, but if you have a defense that's gifting opposition teams, inferior teams, goals on a regular basis, it might well be that you'll have a game where you keep Haaland quiet, for example, and everyone will say, what a wonderful result. We've got a real platform to build on our day. We can take on any team in the Premier League. But then the next game, you go and lose, I don't know, to Leicester, or you go and lose to Wolves.
That's exactly what happened.
And exactly. And this is my point. You're right about getting more out of Son if he is played in a different way. But does that solve the longer lasting problems? It's the reason why I don't necessarily look at last weekend by itself, because last weekend is a snapshot of the problem that Spurs have had all of this season, all of last season. There's an argument. In fact, I remember going to the game and writing after you lost, I think it was to Southampton at home, that if you were going to get into the top 4, you're going to have to shoot your way into it, because the defenders simply can't do their jobs. And people talk about Conte, right? Sticking it all on the players. But there were many, many times last season where Conte said, I'm so proud of this lot. And in fact, I think it was the win over Newcastle at home, where he said, with this group of players, I'd like to play some of the teams that beat us easily earlier in the season. I now have a lot of faith. And that was before the work he'd done in the summer. So I know there were lots of people who disagreed with me and felt that when Conte went on his rant, that he wasn't taking any responsibility. But there were plenty of times when he did give credit to the players. But the fact is that set of players haven't been able to be consistent enough. They've got some superb results in them, and they've got periods in the game where they will score goals. They'll take anybody on. I just got to correct myself as well. I said they were the highest scorers in the top 6, the 3rd highest scorers in the Premier League. But the general point I'm trying to make is that you would fancy the Spurs front line against anybody. But that back 3, 5, 4, whatever formation you set up with, there is zero leadership at the back. Nobody can keep concentration for 90 minutes on a consistent basis. And that's why I said at the moment, it looks as though Aston Villa will take your place in the top 4. It looks like Brighton are going to take your place in the top 4. And you can see why players' heads are starting to drop, and why people are disillusioned, and why there's terror in the back. I would argue the back 6, 7 at the moment. In the summer, regardless of who takes over, there is some serious work to do in moving some players out, moving some players in. One last point, if I can.
Go for it.
Just very, very briefly. I'll do it. I promise.
That's all right.
I was fascinated by the treatment of Davinson Sanchez, and I'm sure, and it might be wrong, there might be people on here who do feel angry at him, but actually, firstly, I think the mistake for the goal wasn't actually his fault. It was Pedro Porro's fault, and Sanchez just wasn't able to react quickly enough, but it wasn't his mistake. But the second thing is the fact that he's still even at the club is part of the problem. He's not good enough. He's not good enough for the team. He's an honest boy, but he isn't good enough to play for Tottenham, and he should have been moved on a long time ago. And it's a real surprise he is still there on the one hand, but then you look at the team, the squad, there are still too many players at Tottenham who should have been moved on a long time ago.
100%. And that kind of leads on to the next point of, like you said, Darren, in terms of this defence and the fact, like you said, the goal came, and like Dan said, there was two instances. Obviously, the first one, Crackers, I come to you, was the fact that Pedro Porro decided that he was going to take on 3 players and got dispossessed of the ball, which again, I think is madness in itself, which goes back to Darren's point about leadership. And we've seen this all season. There is real no leadership at the back. But for you, what was your kind of thoughts on the first goal and the treatment of obviously Davinson Sanchez at the weekend?
Well, the first car has just been indicative of Spurs this season, isn't it? It's sometimes there's this constant need to play out from the back, and if you're under the cosh a little bit, just once or twice, maybe go a little bit agricultural, just clear your lines. You know, it's not that far removed the game from what gets played at Sunday league level sometimes, just lots of noughts added on to the end of values and prices of everything. So sometimes there's basic tenets and principles of the game where you can just go, okay, might not be very cultured, but just get rid. You know, Porro should be seeing that he's got 3 round him. So straight away, he should be switched on to that danger. And even if he just knocks it into one of the players to get himself a throw in or something, it just clears that immediate danger, doesn't it? But again, we get ourselves into trouble. Now there's nobody behind him that sees the trouble. As Darren says, there's no leader there. There's nobody that's able to react quick enough or just maybe push into a position and also see that Porro's got 3 round him and smell the danger and go, oh, okay, if he loses it here, I need to be here. And they're in. They're straight away. They play a simple 1-2, and they're in and done. And this is the story of Tottenham, as a former manager once said. You know, there's lots of stories of Tottenham at the moment, from board level to pitch to everything. So it was totally avoidable. It was ill thought out from a defence that just doesn't really have much of a collective football brain between them. And, you know, I think every week Tottenham's biggest opponent is Tottenham. It's always ourselves, you know, it's never who we're playing. We have to beat ourselves first. That's where we are. Davinson Sanchez, wow. Listen, I think that booing was a mixture of a lot of things. I think it was a mixture of booing Stellini, who's put him on and taken him off and way out of his depth and not know what he's doing. I think there's booing towards the board for allowing him to come in as an easy option to try and get us to the end of the season. I think it was just the general malaise around the place that caused the booing as well. And maybe some towards Davinson. I think it's the same as I said on Last One at Spurs at the weekend and weekend before. The songs for Pochettino may not be for Pochettino himself, more a song, a familiar song to say, sort this rubbish out, we need a manager. So there might be people there in their hearts think to themselves, don't really want Poch, but I want something. So this Poch song fits the agenda to get behind and sing, to vocalise our disapproval. And I think that's the same as the booing. I'm more upset with the senior players and their reaction after the game with Davinson Sanchez, because the lad's barely played for us. He isn't good enough. He should have gone. And I think even within that, Hollie, there's a mixture of things there. I don't think the club's helped him to develop enough, because he came to us from Ajax, and I had plenty of Ajax fans telling me, wow, what a player you're getting now. And you know, I don't think they've really helped him to develop into that player that he potentially was at Ajax. So I think the club's got some blame. Maybe it's just a case of Sanchez not being good enough as well. But back to those senior players, they should be coming out in the media, like Loris in that beIN Sports interview after the game, and telling people, don't get on his back. I'm the senior man. I'm the captain. Harry Kane, Eric Dyer, a few of them should be saying, if you want to boo any players, you boo us. We're the senior boys. We're the big boys. We're the ones with the big boys' pants on. You boo us. We've let you down. We know we're not good enough. Not some lad that's come on. That's destroyed him. That is absolutely destroyed him. He'll come back from it, no doubt. But that destroyed him. And those players should have stepped up post-match and taken that hit for him. They should have deflected that onto him. But I think that's just indicative of where we are as a squad. There's no band of brothers there at all at the moment. And I think they're a reflection on the way the club currently is run and the way it is at the moment.
Definitely. I think it's just one big mess. Like you said, like I'm not Sanchez's biggest fan, but I don't think I'd ever boo a player that's done something wrong. I think, like you said, Crackers, it was just a frustration kind of thing from our part. But I just want to talk because obviously at the moment there's a thing going around, and I know Last Word on Spurs mentioned it the other day for Tottenham for change, in the sense that for something to change, we need to kind of all come together. So if that's something you want to be a part of, go follow them on Twitter, just because I think at the moment, Lee, everybody's just kind of under this impression, kind of like Cracker said. We'll get onto the manager talk just because I know we're dissecting a bit of the game, but I think manager is probably the next big thing because we haven't really got one at the moment. So I come to you, Lee, with Crackers saying about the whole Poch thing and people singing about wanting Poch back. What's your kind of thoughts on it in terms of manager, in terms of the singing? What are you kind of feeling?
Get it done. Absolutely get it done. Get the geezer back in the seat, in the hot seat right now. You asked me the question. I am not holding back. Pochettino has got all the credentials that we need. He had all the credentials. He had one season of badness. He didn't win an away game for 12 months. I will caveat that by saying the club didn't make a signing for him for 518 days. He got 2 FA Cup semi-finals, 1 League Cup final, a Champions League final, 2 title challenges under a period where we had to have 3 home stadiums. 3 home. Name a club in the world where in one season you've had to play 3 home games at 3 different stadiums. This guy's magic, you know. And this is not about nostalgia. This is about unfinished business for me. This is about taking what we need as a club, the culture of the football club, the understanding environment. Daniel Levy come out and said, we want our next manager to have the fabric and the DNA of our football club. And since then, we've appointed Nuno Espirito Santo. We've appointed Antonio Conte, who I was fully behind, by the way, and I'm fully behind some of the things that he actually said in that press conference, to be honest. But you're hiring managers like Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte and not backing them with the players. They are win-now managers. They need win-now players. Jose asked for Skriniar. He gets Joe Rodon. Yeah, this is a common theme. Harry Redknapp all them years ago wants a top-class centre-back. Brian Nelson. Hello. Carrying on. You know, you're looking at Antonio Conte. He wants Bastoni. He gets an on-loan Clement Longley, who hasn't been too bad, to be fair, but it's not the first choice. This is indicative. If Tottenham can't get the first choice because we're not Waitrose, plenty of other supermarkets out there, and we're only Asda, then go and buy Asda produce, right? Don't go and buy Waitrose produce. You can't afford to get it. Are you with me? So look, Pochettino, if you look at what we need as a football club, this is my opinion only. That's why you got me on the show. It's no one else's opinion. It's just mine personally. What we need in this football club is we need to understand why we exist. What is our why? What is the culture of the football club? What do we want to be? Decide. Do we want to be top 4 and profit making? Do we want to be top 6? Do we want to win trophies? Do we want to try and compete? No one, even Pep Guardiola said it last week, the week before. No one's got a God-given right to win a trophy, right? There's only 4 trophies you can win every single season. My point being is, under Pochettino, we were in with a chance of winning trophies. We didn't win any. We did, of course we didn't. And that's what always levied back at me. Oh, why are you banging that Poch drum? But the fact of the matter is, we play front foot attacking football. We were 25 yards further up the pitch. Everybody enjoyed watching the football. And it's the anniversary today of us beating Manchester City in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. utter carnage game. You know, if you've got your analysis hat on, you'd be saying we were lucky. But the joy, the moment of going through, the moment in Ajax, this is as good. People will batter me for it. It's up to you. But them memories, them things that we think look back on, that they are as what might be as good as lifting a Carabao Cup in a drab 1-0 win over a penalty shootout against Manchester United or whatever it might be. Yes, it's a trophy, but ultimately it's not just about going in the top 4. The club need to understand that most of us fans, and I've polled it out, and I appreciate saying on social media and whatever it might be, we're not bothered about just top 4. We want a trophy. We want success. We want to enjoy going to football. You know, we have to renew our season tickets. I'm a season ticket holder. I pay for my season ticket, regardless of what people may or may not think. And I want to know that I'm going there and getting the produce that I'm paying for, not getting served up this turgid, wretched rubbish every single week. And I'll tell you where it started, right? When we hired Jose Mourinho, and then we played West Ham at home on 18th of October 2020. We were 3-1 up in that game, and we drew that game 3-3. And from that day, we just shut the door. Jose Mourinho must have gone absolutely ballistic at all of them senior players, because since then, that's when we've got that defensive issue. And we think at the moment, by playing 3 at the back or 5 at the back when we haven't got the ball, that's defensive solidity. But Darren just made the point earlier and absolutely bang on. We've got one of the worst defensive records in the Premier League this year. You know, we've only conceded 6 more goals than Southampton at the bottom of the league. So that's clearly the issue, that retreating in games, what you mentioned earlier, Hollie. So, yeah, when you're looking at managers, you're looking at Luis Enrique, right? Unbelievable manager. I'm not saying he's a bad manager. He's an amazing manager. He's going to come in and go, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, Bentancur, Skip, Sarr, Basuma. I'm not used to that level of technical ability, so I'm going to need to overhaul the entire midfield. Yeah, Luis Enrique. Like, you can't get him to come in and stop. That's another 2, 3, 4, 5 years rebuild, just to get them other managers in. Nagelsmann. Now we're going to start looking at Nagelsmann. Oh yeah, I'd love him at Tottenham. It'd be amazing. Chelsea are going to buy it, have him. Real Madrid. We've got to be looking. We've got a guy sitting here that's not making do. This is a guy that bleeds Tottenham Hotspur. He has played in the modern era the best football we've seen. We've had turgid football since Jose was appointed at this football club. And we need to get back to how we was before. And that's coming back to the culture of the football club. What is the vision and the plan and the essence of this football club? Because it is dying. And it is rapidly dying. And it won't matter. Some people might think it won't matter at board level because the seats are still filled. We had 61,500 people watching that turgid rubbish the other day at Bournemouth. And maybe if we don't turn up as season ticket holders, they just sell them on the exchange, or somebody else will come along. But that's not what the fabric of this football club is. And it's being lost really, really quickly. For every week that goes past, it's being lost. And I'm not sure whether it can come back again. But I do know there's one man that could start to drive that love for this football club back. And it's Maurizio. And we'll know it. It's just whether or not you agree, that's different. But we know that he can bring that magic back.
I mean, I don't think I can even just say, no, I don't agree, Lee, after that comment. I don't think I can sit here and say that. But I think you're right. In terms of someone to come back and fulfill energy again, yes, he's probably the right man. But Darren, I come to you. For me, I feel like it's too soon for Mauricio Pochettino to come back because there's still players there that Poch had. He's still got the same board, and we've evidently seen that Levy isn't the guy that's going to give the money to players that he necessarily wants. So for you, Darren, what's your kind of outlook on what Spurs do next?
Well, before I ask, I just want to ask all three of you a question, really. When Pochettino left, around about a year to 18 months before he left, he was saying almost exactly the same things to us as journalists as Conte was saying before, in the 6 months before he left. So what's changed?
Nothing.
Nothing, Darren. Nothing. And that's the most important signing. If you could sign it, culture, a plan, and stick with it, even if it's tough to start with for 2-3 seasons and bite through it. Mate, dare I say, the mob up the road have got it spot on. They have got it spot on. They might fall short this season, but and listen, part of me hopes that they do. Of course they do. I wouldn't be a Tottenham fan. Fans thrive on Schadenfreude, don't they? But part of me also fills me hope that a club with a similar budget to ours, no state money, no oil money, etc., a similar operating budget to us, can, if they get elements right within the club that don't actually cost anything, just some bravery and joined up thinking, can win the league or go very, very close. And that's the most important thing Tottenham's got to get right before even the next manager. Sorry, Darren.
Just on that point, sorry, just quickly, just on that point as well, Craig, that you made. I remember having another quite passionate debate on last one on Spurs when Antonio Conte came out and towards the end of his era, it felt like he was doing us a favour or whatever. And he come out and said something in his press conference saying, you can't turn around in one season. Well, no, I'm sorry. Arsenal finished what? 2 points behind us. 2 points behind us last season. They're currently 21 points in front of us. 21. Utterly ridiculous. And that a club that's close to your heart, Darren, Liverpool Football Club. When Klopp first came in, and the sliding doors moment, clearly for any outsider looking in, was when Tottenham mullered Liverpool 4-1 at Wembley, and he said, right, okay, Lovren's got to go. We need to go and get Alisson. We need to go and buy, Van Dijk or whatever in that January and in that summer. That end of that season, a 22-point swing from Liverpool Football Club in one season. So it can happen, and it does happen, and we need to believe, and we need to have people within our organisation, within the business structure, within the footballing side of the business, to instill the belief that it can happen. I was one of the most positive Tottenham fans before probably this season, and what done me, the biggest thing that done me was Sheffield United. I was there, Cracks and I were there. In the away end, it was utterly abysmal, and it just showed. Just like sacking a manager 6 days before a League Cup final, one of the most decorated managers on the planet, by the way, just goes to show where the priorities of this football club, where the priorities of the board are. It isn't about winning trophies. It isn't about that, because you don't put a rookie in charge, regardless of how turgid the football was before. The bloke has won 30-odd trophies in his career. You don't put a rookie in charge 6 days before a League Cup final if your ambition is to win a trophy. Just don't do it. It's just no one can argue with me. You can argue with me, of course you can, but you just don't do that. And the other key thing for me, and that's why the culture, coming back to that, the culture, you have to identify in any business. This is my third business that I've started now. I've worked for powerhouse people. I've worked for powerhouse corporate organisations. Worked for Lord Sugar, who used to own our football club. For God's sake, like, you don't set up a company or a structure or a team with no ethos or philosophy that everybody's part of. And if they're not part of it, guess what? Off you go. This is as ruthless, and it comes back down to the Davinson Sanchez's, the Eric Dyers, the players, if they've been there too long and they don't believe in it. How can we hear stories from dressing rooms saying there's certain players that don't want Poch back? So what? If it's the right thing for the club, then the players need to move on. This is a major problem. And this is the rebuild, ironically, that Mauricio Pochettino talked about all them years ago. I mean, you could not make this stuff up. And what's happened, I will shut up, I promise I will. But what's happened is we've gone round in this circle whereby most football clubs, again, I'll bring up Liverpool. Most football clubs go around in a cycle, whereby they hit the heights of their cycle and they're winning stuff. Look at Liverpool. They did the lot, mate. Absolutely brilliant. They might be having a bit of a tough season right now, but we can bear that because ultimately you've done everything and you're for a rebuild scenario. Manchester United used to do it even under Alex Ferguson. He was a master at rebuilding, but it might take 1, maybe 2 seasons to rebuild and then they're back again. Tottenham, we got to the highest level that we could get to and we still didn't win anything. And then guess what? We're going back round in our cycle again and it's just turgid. And something needs to change, doesn't it? Team, honestly, Something needs to give, because you can't keep doing this. If you're winning along the way, maybe you can't keep sacking managers every 2 years. We haven't had a permanent manager. Here's the thing, right? We have not had a permanent manager in place for a full season since Pochettino left.
It's mad. It is honestly insane. And
Crazy.
that's the thing that just infuriates me. Like you say, Lee, we just go round and round in circles. It drives me potty. But Darren, coming back to you, what's your kind of thoughts on Spurs looking for a new manager? What direction should they take? I mean, that's a bit of a hard question because even Spurs fans don't even know the direction anymore.
Well, the interesting thing is all the names that have been mentioned, because, for example, Eric Dyer and the new contract. I don't know who mentioned that, but while you're looking for a new manager, should any players get a new contract? Shouldn't it be the decision of the new manager? And part of the problem is that the Spurs are looking at other clubs' managers and seeing the jobs that they do and not really understanding that they're doing that job well because of the culture that surrounds them at that club. Brighton have a plan. Brentford have a plan. Liverpool have a plan. Arsenal, you mentioned them, have a plan. If you look at Arsenal's squad, how many players were there 6 years ago? Not many. They don't even have the same keeper that they had 2 years ago, because they realized they had Leno, and Leno didn't have the consistency that Ramsdale had. They've got one of the youngest squads in the Premier League, whereas there are lots of players who have been at Spurs too long. And if you're going to give a new manager the job of transforming the club, then you have to empower that manager to move players out if he sees fit. And one of the first things all of you guys and everyone watching knows, one of the first things that Pochettino did when he came in was get all of the older players out. Soldado, Adebayo, all of the underachieving players. He got them all out because he wanted a young squad to work with. The only senior player, if I can remember rightly, that survived was Lloris. And Lloris has been a magnificent servant for the club. And maybe he could stay on in another role within the club. But surely it is time now to look at a David Raya, look at one of the other high-performing, Sanchez maybe, one of the other high-performing younger goalkeepers in the Premier League, and look for a way forward. Because I think what Spurs need more, it's a little bit like when Newcastle were hunting for a manager, when actually what they needed was a director of football. They needed somebody to have a plan, to set something up so that no matter what manager they lost, somebody could slot in and continue the plan, which is exactly what De Zerbi is doing at Brighton. There were moments when Graham Potter had a difficult spell at Brighton. Nobody remembers that because everybody remembers that final season that he was there. And, put Chelsea to one side, because everybody knows Chelsea is a very, it's a mess. But I think as far as Brighton are concerned, their success is because when Potter left, they were able to slot another capable manager, some would say an upgrade maybe, on Potter into a system that already worked, into a model that already worked. And what you have at Tottenham are ambitions alongside the top six with a squad and a budget that is actually, maybe top, I don't know, 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th. You don't have the finance of the superpowers in the Premier League. And all of you mentioned that pivotal moment under Harry Redknapp when you could have competed for the league had you signed Tevez and Cahill, you signed Ryan Nelson and Luis Zaha. And they are Tottenham's limitations, to be fair to the club. And they've been honest about it. They've spoken to the supporters' trust and they've said, look, we've had to take risks on certain players that haven't paid off. But I just wonder if you need a ruthlessness about the culture now to say, listen, to some players, listen, you've been great for us, or maybe you haven't been great for us. It is time to move you on. It is time to change the culture, revamp the squad, because right now you could get another high-profile manager into the football club, but they've got an old, stale squad to work with. And if you were to lose Harry, if somebody made an offer you couldn't refuse for Son, where would Spurs be then?
it's not even worth thinking about. I don't think I want to think about it. But Darren, you make some amazing points in a sense that at the moment we have no direction. And Crackers, coming to you, Darren, saying about obviously all these old players, hearing the news that Eric Dyer's probably going to be given another contract. It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. And I know there's people in the chat saying Daniel Levy needs to come out and say things, and we know that's never going to happen. But with you, Crackers, it's true. There needs to be a massive overhaul. And I swear we talk about this every week and pretty much every season.
Yeah, no, exactly. And Darren's right. It's who oversees that overhaul. Who will they be given that autonomy? When Scott Munn comes in the summer, will he be micromanaged or will he be given some autonomy to make decisions along with the manager, whoever that may be, whether you want Poch or Company coming in or Slot? Are you going to give them that autonomy to make sure that they get to have a go at it? Are the board going to give that person those initial 3-4 years to implement those changes and bring in their philosophy and give it a go? Because I'll take failure in football and at Tottenham all day long if we're having a go at something. And if we fall short and it doesn't quite happen, I'd say, well, you know what, hats off. We stuck with it. We gave it a go, and it never quite happened.
Lee, can I just add to what you're saying? You made the point earlier about Arsenal. Even if Arsenal lose the league this season, every Arsenal fan, they'll be gutted. They'll be devastated. But you can actually see where the club is going. You can see that he's been empowered to get all of the older players out, Lacazette, Aubameyang, all of the older players who were on big money but were underperforming and actually had the club where they were. Arteta's come in and the club has said, it's on you. You've seen the documentary. The club have said, it's all on you. You work with Edu. You decide what you're going to do. And it's completely not just change the squad, but change the culture as well. Would that be the case at Spurs?
No.
Sorry.
No, it absolutely wouldn't, because I just don't think this current board running the club can actually release that power and that control that they have. I just cannot see them doing it. And if they did, great. That's fine, because like I always say, I don't care who owns the club, really, within reason, as long as it's not some fascist regime. It's fine by me. It can be Joe Lewis, Lennox Lewis, or Leona Lewis. I don't care who's signing the checks. It doesn't matter to us.
Darren Lewis. It could be Darren Lewis.
Oh, Darren Lewis. Yeah.
I couldn't afford the wage cut.
There's an open goal I missed. I don't trust them to give those people that need the autonomy that autonomy. There's so many small wins that this club could get right now. They convey nothing to us as fans. Daniel Levy will not come out and speak to us. He speaks to us occasionally via the state TV, as I call it, the club's channels. I mean, you look at Amanda Staveley after they lost the League Cup final. She gave interviews to journalists. She spoke to TalkSport, and she spoke of her immense pride in the fans and the club, and that we came up short. But you know what? We're going to give this another go next season and see if we can't put a trophy in the cabinet. And I listened to that, and it's day and night between herself and Daniel Levy or Donna Cullen. You will get absolutely nothing from them. And I don't understand why. They should be talking to us. If there's difficulties, like now with a manager, one of them come out and just say, look, we do want a manager, but we want the right manager. And that means that we have got to wait till the end of the season for that to happen. You would be a little bit more accepting. You might not be happy about it, but you'd say, okay, fair play. Somebody has come out and fronted up to the fans and conveyed a message. The silence is deafening. the vacuum is just filled on social media and amplified with conjecture, hatred, what's, whys and wherefores as to what's going on. And, you know, it's like chicken licking the sky's falling in at the moment on social media, isn't it? With people just trying to second guess what's going on. I always say a chairman or a board members should be able to walk around their stadium at a home game at 2 p.m. on the day of a match and go into a bar, any of the bars around the ground, plot up with some of the fans, have a pint or a glass of water, whichever it is, and have a chat, cup of tea, and be able to have a chat. Sure, they'll get a few jibes and shouts of like when you're selling him, when you're signing him, etc., etc. That's always going to happen. At the moment, those board members would literally get torn limb from limb. And if that's the case, if you cannot walk around your stadium and be amongst your fans for fear of your own safety, you're not. There's rights and wrongs in that, by the way. You're not running your club correctly, because it was not that long ago that Daniel Levy had a fans forum with 300 odd people there, with Lloris and host and Pochettino, and there was no problems there. He came along because people felt that it was going okay and running right. If you can't do that at 2 p.m. on match day, you're not running the club right.
Can I just? I'm going to try and be positive for you guys, because I know there's not a lot to be positive about. But I'm going to try and be positive and say that we used Arsenal as an example, and we can remember, what was it, a couple of years ago, where the fans after the Super League and all of the quite scary scenes at Arsenal, at Manchester United, where the fans had enough. And to be frank, I feel they took it way too far. And I'm never going to come on any podcast and condone some of the stuff that I saw. But the explosion of anger that we saw, it was almost like a sea change at those clubs. And the people upstairs realised something had to give. And they made a really good decision at United with Erik ten Hag. And Arsenal decided, we are going to back our manager when he needs it. Hence that mid-season backing for Arteta with Jorginho and Leandro Trossard, both of whom were excellent signings. And I think there is the potential for Spurs to really be decisive this summer and move some players out, raise the funds from doing that, and empower a new man to come in and work with Scott Munn. He starts his job as the chief football officer on June the 1st, I think it is, July the 1st, sorry. And work hand in glove the same way that Arteta does with Edu, and bring players in that suit the club. There are players out there. There are lots of quality players whose contracts are either going to expire in the summer or are running down. So there are bargains to be had out there. And it's possible to reconfigure this Tottenham side in a way that really works for the club. I look at Liverpool a few months back. I think when they had Luis Suarez, for example. And actually, ironically, they didn't have the plan that they do now under Jurgen Klopp, but they went from 7th to 2nd. They literally just failed to win the league. Now, I'm not saying that with the changes that happen that Spurs can do that, because all of us live in the real world. But Spurs became competitive again under Pochettino, and Spurs can be, if there is a plan. You look at Brighton against lots of clubs that have far more resources, but with good scouting, with the ability to source players cheaply, bring them in, give them their heads, decide on a really clear system. It's positive. It's possible to turn things around. And I think that could happen. But I do think that really painful rebuild that Pochettino talked about, or that 5 years ago, was it? It needs to happen now. It's got to happen now. And really and truly, it's now or never in some respects, because City will only get stronger, Arsenal will get stronger, Liverpool will not be as bad away from home as they have been this season. They'll get the midfielders they need. They're talking about Ryan Gravenberch at Bayern Munich, who's a terrific young midfielder. And there'll be others as well that will come in. Newcastle, they're going to be incredible next season. So I think there are very, very difficult decisions to make this summer. And they could well be funded by the departure of Harry Kane. And, you guys, I mentioned all the players that you lost before in the past, but you've become strong again. You got into top 4 after you lost Berbatov. You got to a Champions League final after you lost Gareth Bale. Spurs can be strong again. You know one player is bigger than any club. And I think if Harry were to go and you were to get good money, and there was some really clear thinking about who to get, rather than chasing the players that everybody else is chasing, because Brighton have shown that kind of approach up to be just crazy, really. Mitoma, Caicedo, Estepinian, Evan Ferguson, who cost, a few £100. I'm obviously exaggerating a bit there, but it costs next to nothing in relative terms. But that quality is out there. And I think Spurs could, if there was some really clear thinking, there is a way through this mess at the moment. And I don't think it needs to necessarily be all doom and gloom. And I'm going to be optimistic and suggest that maybe now is rock bottom for the club, and that this could well be the start of a fight back.
Can I just, Hollie? Sorry,
That's right.
I think it's fascinating, some of the stuff you said there, Crackers and Darren as well. I just want to throw some. I love spitting facts. I know it annoys some people, but I love actually doing it. So AVB got our highest points total in the Premier League history when he was a manager. When he had Gareth Bale in that 2012-2013 season, which was absolutely unreal. 76 points. Played absolute turgid football if it weren't for Gareth Bale, to be fair. It was absolutely a one-man team. And it was sensational to watch in terms of that season. The next season, he got sacked because it was absolutely abysmal. And the game where I threw my season ticket, metaphorically speaking, in the air was when we lost 1-0 at home to West Bromwich Albion under AVB. It was absolute turgid. We then sacked him. Then we got Sherwood in as an interim. We got rid of him pretty quickly after about 44 days. And then we got Poch in. This is 2014. And Poch come in, as you mentioned earlier, Dan, cleared out some of the, them senior players, Adebayor, Caballs, blah, blah, blah. And within the next season, we had a title challenge. And then the season after that, we had a proper title challenge, what I call a proper title challenge. And then we went on to 2 FA Cup semi-finals, a League Cup final under Pochettino, I think in that first season as well. Obviously, Champions League final. And all of them things that on that positive side, it can happen. It can happen. And that painful rebuild that you've just referenced and we've talked about throughout the show is happening now. This is the painful rebuild. It's not finished, and it's definitely painful. But this is the painful stuff. Maybe, Hollie, going back to your point, I think when we was in the green room, when you said, I'm not quite sure whether it's the right time for Poch to come back. Maybe that is the reason why he shouldn't come back yet, because he's going to have to come in and deal with all the rubbish that he should have been dealing with before they sacked him, because they shouldn't have sacked him, because he shouldn't have been in that position in the first place if they'd have let him deal with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There was a lot there. There's another thing as well with the Liverpool connection. I'm referencing Liverpool quite a lot tonight as well. Darren's affectionate with the Liverpool side, but also there's quite a good difference in terms of cycles. When they did have that sliding doors moment, and then they spent that money and they had that 22 points win. The other key thing that they did to fund that is they sold their best player. You sold Coutinho, and 140 million. And actually that funded, like we sold Gareth Bale, we bought the Magnificent Seven, which weren't that magnificent. Again, nice recruitment, Tottenham. But ultimately Liverpool did some fantastic recruitment, like the Brighton stuff, the structure. Who's the guy that went from England to Newcastle? I wasn't he at Brighton as well. Is it Dan Ashworth? Is it? Yeah. Have I got that wrong? Again, there's that key structure working. When you look at Tottenham's director of football, great to respect Mr. Paratici, but we've got 6 directors of football in our history. They might have signed some good players, but not one of them has worked. Not one after 6. Tottenham Hotspur Football Club was the first. They pioneered. We love pioneering things, by the way. pioneering no signings for the 518 days, for example. But we were the pioneers for a director of football in the Premier League. We're the first club ever to do it. And you can argue, going through the director of football, did it work? Franco Baldini, Damien Comoli, like these players, these directors of football were with us 5 minutes or whatever, and they wanted to go somewhere else. Never really worked. The two sustained periods of success, and I can't even call it that, but like I said on Sky a couple of weeks ago, because we didn't win anything, was under Harry Redknapp with no director of football, and Maurizio Pochettino, no director of football. Hello. So let's go. I'll tell you what we do. Let's go down the route of a director of football, but it doesn't work.
But the problem with both those examples you mentioned is that towards the last days of them leaving, they were both making the same noises as Conte.
Yeah, and again, I think I promise I'll zip my mouth. You'll never have me back on the show again. But I agree with you, Darren, totally. And I want to say that I actually agreed with Antonio Conte's comments. I think the way he did it and the way it was inevitable and he wanted to get sacked or whatever it was. But actually what he was saying, what Poch has said, what other managers have said gone before, to echo what Cracker said before, they're right. Darren, Hollie, Crackers, they're right. We know they're right. But does the board, come on, I'm asking you, Daniel Levy and the board, do you know that they're right? Because do the right thing and just put this football club back where it should be on the footing. We haven't got a God-given right to win a trophy. We haven't won one for so many years. But put us into a situation, we were promised that things will change. It's a game changer, the stadium. Game changer for what? The profits? Or the game changer for my profits in my pocket? Because it's damn sight more expensive now to go to watch Tottenham than it was in the old White Hart Lane. Do you know what I mean? So what's the game changer thing here? We've got, Darren, you've mentioned about we haven't got the money. We've got the highest amount of grossing ticket sales in the Premier League. This is facts. We're the 9th richest club in the world. This is madness. We have got the money. We haven't got the vision. We haven't got the structure, and we haven't got the culture to be an elite, competitive, winning football team. And off the pitch, we are magnificent. The commercial aspect of this football club, the stadium, everything about it is magnificent. The guys do a magnificent job on the football pitch. The football decisions, diabolical, absolutely diabolical. And somebody said it in the comments, I can't name check them, sorry, but Scott Munn has a bloody tough job. I just hope that when Scott comes in on July the 1st, as you mentioned, that we can start to have some communication and some visibility of what this bloody plan is, because it drives us all up the wall.
It really does. It drives us mental. Before we go, just not obviously going too far forward towards the end of the season, although we quite like to have it at that point right now. I just want to do a quick overview, and then I promise I'll let everybody go, about Newcastle coming up at the weekend. So, Crackers, I'll start with you first. What's your kind of thoughts? We've had a bit of a positive chat. So is this preview going to be positive or not?
Well, Tottenham, such a basket case club at the moment, you wouldn't put it past us to go up there and Harry Kane and Sonny to like knock a couple of 1-2s together, and we come away with like a 2-1 win. I mean, Tottenham, bless them, you just cannot put them in your accumulator, can you? If you're a football betting man, because we could go up there and win it 5-1, and we could go up there and lose it 5-1. You know, we're Baywatch up front and Crime Watch at the back, and it's.
Oh, there it is, man. We've been waiting for one liner.
Isn't it? That's just where we are. It's honestly, it's like just quickly, Hollie. I want to hark back to something that Darren said when he mentioned Brighton. There's something absolutely on us fans as well. He mentioned Matoma there. He came to Brighton for £3 million. Now, Brighton fans have gone, okay, all right, let's see what he can do. He walks into our team now. He dances into our team. If Tottenham bought him for £3 million, there'd be riots. What are we doing spending £3 million on a player? So us as fans have also got to buy into an amount of trust. And if the scouts see a player that could come good and he costs £3 million, then fantastic, because we all jumped up and down at Lo Celso and Ndembele coming in at a combined £100 million, and tell me where they are now. So
Do you know,
his
Crackers? You make such a good point with that. I remember when Pochettino was at the club, and during that, I remember talking to some of the other journalists actually ahead of one of the press conferences, and he changed. So I've been covering Spurs for probably well on 20 years and been in and around or whatever. And
sorry about that, Darren, by the way.
I remember there was a long period, and it still exists in football, really, that clubs only show, I believe that clubs only show ambition if they spend huge amounts of money on players. Under Pochettino, I remember Harry Winks getting into the team. And when you were playing at Wembley, after one particular match, you were due to play Real Madrid that week. And we did the little huddle outside the mix zone. And he was telling us that Harry Winks would start against Real Madrid. And everybody was quite surprised. You're not serious. You're not really going to... He's just come from the academy. And sure enough, a few days later, Harry Winks did start against Real Madrid. And actually, he did very well.
Yes.
My point is, Pochettino had absolute belief in the young players in your academy. And I in the time I've sort of been covering, following, whatever, Spurs, there isn't another manager that had as much faith in the young players in the Spurs academy as Pochettino. Now, I'm kind of split as to whether he should go back, because on the one hand, David Moyes' second spell at West Ham, they realised they'd made a mistake. They brought him back. They've been in a European semi-final, and they're probably 90 minutes away from a second European semi-final. And they're actually coming good in terms of their form. 3 wins out of the last 4 in the last few games. And so you can go back in some situations. The difference is that I don't see anything to have changed. Pochettino would come back to a squad that's got a lot of the same players that he left, 5-6 years ago. And that's a big part of the problem. What Spurs need to look for right now is a culture first and a manager second.
Yeah.
If you get that, you've got a great chance, because then, as you say, Crackers, you will bring in players like Mitoma, and fans won't turn around and say, who is he? Fans will understand what you're trying to do, that you've got that conveyor belt, that you've got that recruitment structure of buying low, selling big, and you're thinking outside the box, so that you're doing the kind of thing that Brighton do, that Brentford do, that other clubs should be doing, but have all been kind of seduced into thinking we have to show ambition to our fans by spending £20 million. £20 million, leaking the terms of the deal so that it shows that we can match the line. Really? I think what you could do right now, culture first, manager second. Otherwise, we'll be back here in a year's time talking about what's gone wrong with the next man.
Wanyama, 11 million quid. Toby Alderweireld, 11 million quid. Eric Dyer, 3.5 million. Dele Alli, he only cost 5 mil. We all know that tune.
And when was Dele Alli best? What was Dele Alli's best spell?
Exactly.
Under Pochettino, never been the same player since.
Harry Winks come through the academy. All them players, they didn't cost loads of money. That was the culture. I think you nailed it on the head. Is that we started looking at brand new shiny things, going, look, we need to go and buy Lo Celsos and then Dembeles and these big. Sanchez coming in August 2017 as club record signing, 42 million. We just talked about Sanchez at the beginning of the show. So that is that culture, that is that structure, that is that plan. I think most fans will get behind, right, okay, we can stomach waiting again for another 2 years, 3 years, God forbid, not that much longer. But if we know where we're going, and at the moment we're just drifting. And in any sport, any team, any business, you can't drift. The minute you start drifting, you're going backwards. And that is exactly what's happened to Tottenham Hotspur Football Club.
100%. And I think tonight everybody's kind of hit the nail on the head in the sense that, yes, I'm frustrated and waiting for a trophy, but if at least I know where I'm heading, I can at least wait a bit longer. And I think that's the thing that's irate in many Spurs fans. which is why we saw Sanchez booing at the weekend, which is why we're seeing all these things around our club not necessarily going the way we want them to go. And it's just getting very toxic. So the sooner they come out and say what's going on, I think the best we all will be stress-wise. We won't need so many therapy sessions on a Monday. But thank you to you guys for joining me tonight, everybody in the chat. It's been an amazing show. So I just want to say my thank you. So we'll go around the table. So first off, Darren, it's been a pleasure to have you tonight. I'm so over the moon to have you on. So thank you very much. I would say, where can everybody find you? But I think they pretty much know where you are.
I'm out and about.
But no, honestly, thank you so much. And to Crackers, I waited for a one-liner. It came. It was brilliant. Yes, I'm definitely going back and clipping it. But no, thank you, Crackers. Where can everybody find you, my friend?
On a beach in Lanzarote, and it still ain't far enough away from Tottenham. But in the little box in your pocket, I'm at Mr. Cracknell.
Love it, Crackers. Thank you so much. And Lee as well. Thank you again for joining me. Like I said, it's been a very mad show. I've been surrounded by stars all night. So where can everybody find you as well, Lee?
Thank you, Hollie, for having me on. I really, really appreciate it. And to share it with Darren and Crackers and your good self is amazing. At Lee McQueen's my Twitter handle. Please come and follow me. I'm still trying to build my following up. You can also get me on Instagram, which is lee.mcqueen. You always see my face on there. None of this faceless like profiles and all that sort of stuff. You'll know it's me because I've got this massive hairstyle going on. And that's what it is. If you like talking Tottenham and having views, then come and follow. If not, feel free, man. Don't follow.
And sometimes a beard, Lee.
Sometimes a beard. And also, Last Word on Spurs. I have to give them a shout. I'm representing, of course, the co-host of Last Word on Spurs, part of the key team in Last Word on Spurs, myself and Crackers as well. So again, Hollie, thank you for having us on. We really appreciate it.
Well
done, thank you. Cheers. Thank you. And thank you to everybody else in the chat as well, watching and things. Like I say, I wouldn't be able to do Hot Pots. I call it Hot Pots. Wouldn't be able to do Hollie's Hotspurs if you weren't all in here tonight. So thank you very much. We will be back live next Monday, 7 p.m, same time, same place. So I hope to see you all then. Until next time.
And great show, Hollie. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.